The observation deck of the Valiant Dawn hummed with the steady rhythm of deep space travel. Lena Hart sat cross-legged on the reinforced floor, her regulation uniform slightly rumpled from 3 consecutive shifts in the xenobiology lab. She should have been sleeping. But sleep had become a luxury she couldn't afford, not when 3 pairs of luminescent eyes watched her every movement with the intensity of starving predators. Except they weren't predators. Not yet, anyway. The Crithani cubs were no larger than earth foxes, their bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep violet to silver depending on their mood. When the Valiant Dawn had discovered the derelict Crithani vessel floating near the Andromeda Rift, the crew had expected salvage opportunities, perhaps ancient technology. Instead, they'd found a nursery pod and 3 terrified cubs. Their caretakers long dead from what the ship's medical AI had identified as rapid atmospheric decompression. Galactic Council protocols were clear. Crithani were classified as apex predators, their adult forms capable of tearing through reinforced titanium with claws and teeth evolved over millennia. Their species had a reputation cold, ruthless, their empire built on conquest and the bones of lesser civilizations. Every regulation manual stated that Crithani young should be handled only by certified xenobiologists, wearing full protective gear. And even then, only when absolutely necessary. Lena had read those manuals, then she'd promptly ignored them. "Come here, Saru," she whispered, extending her hand toward the smallest of the 3 cubs. The little Crithani had been the first to emerge from the pod, confused and chittering in distress. She'd been the one to scoop him up when he'd tried to bite through a power conduit, earning a shallow scratch across her forearm that medical had fussed over for hours. Saru's scales rippled amber curiosity mixed with wariness. He crept forward, his movements jerky and uncertain, until his small head pressed against Lena's palm. She found the spot between his ears, that ridge where scales met soft membrane, and began to rub gentle circles. The effect was instantaneous. Saru's entire body went rigid for half a heartbeat, then melted into a puddle of contentment. A sound emerged from deep in his throat, not quite a purr, more like the resonance of a struck bell, harmonic and unexpectedly soothing. His scales shifted to a warm gold, and his eyes, which had been wide and alert, drooped to half-mast. Lena smiled. "There you go, little guy. Not so scary now, are you?" The other 2 cubs, who had been maintaining a cautious distance, perked up immediately. They watched Saru, with what could only be described as jealousy, their scales flickering through rapid sequences of color. The larger of the 2 took a tentative step forward, then another, his movements more confident than Saru's had been. Before Lena could react, both cubs had scrambled into her lap, their small bodies surprisingly warm against her legs. They chirped and chittered, their heads butting against her hands in unmistakable demand. She laughed, a sound that echoed oddly in the vast observation deck, and obliged, using both hands to scratch behind their ears, while Saru claimed the spot against her chest. All right. There's enough attention to go around," she murmured, her fingers working methodically across scaled heads and delicate membrane ridges. All 3 cubs dissolved into that strange harmonic purring, their bodies vibrating in synchronized contentment. Commander Torres found her like that 20 minutes later. The commanding officer of the Valiant Dawn stood in the doorway, his expression caught between exasperation and something softer that he quickly suppressed. "Hart, the xenobiology team is looking for you. They say you took the specimens without authorization." "Specimens?" Lena didn't look up, her hands never stopping their gentle ministrations. "Is that what we're calling orphaned children now? They're Crithani, Hart. In 6 months, those children will have adult cognition. In a year, they'll be strong enough to tear a human apart without effort." The council isn't here," Lena interrupted, finally meeting his gaze. "We are. And right now, these cubs are terrified, traumatized, and alone. They've lost everything, their family, their home, their entire world. The least we can do is show them kindness." Torres was silent for a long moment. The cubs had noticed him and were watching with wary eyes. Their purring quieted but not stopped. Saru had partially buried himself in the crook of Lena's arm, peeking out at the newcomer with barely concealed suspicion. "You know what happens when we reach the nearest council station," Torres said quietly. "Protocol demands we turn them over to Crithani authorities. And you know what the Crithani do with orphans?" "I know." Lena's voice was tight. The Crithani Empire's practices were well documented. Orphaned cubs were assessed for genetic potential. Those deemed worthy were raised in military creches. Their capacity for empathy systematically eliminated. Those deemed unworthy simply disappeared. But until we reach that station, they're under human protection. My protection. Torres studied her for another moment, then sighed, a sound of a man who knew when he was fighting a losing battle. "You have 48 hours before we reach the station. After that, this is out of my hands." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Hart, I hope you're right about this. I hope whatever you're teaching them sticks." After he left, Lena returned her attention to the cubs. They had relaxed again, their trust in her apparently stronger than their fear of the commander. She resumed, scratching behind their ears, and the harmonic purring filled the air once more. "You're going to remember this," she whispered to them, to Saru especially, who watched her with those two intelligent eyes. "When you're grown and strong and they try to make you into weapons, you're going to remember that a human showed you kindness, that someone cared." Saru chirped softly and nuzzled deeper into her embrace. His scales had settled into a steady, peaceful blue, the color she'd learned from the xenobiology database. Of trust. Outside the observation window, stars stretched into infinite lines as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. Somewhere ahead lay a council station, regulations, and an empire that had forgotten what it meant to be gentle. But here, in this moment, 3 Crithani cubs learned that not all creatures in the universe were threats. Some, inexplicably and wonderfully, offered nothing but warmth and affection. And perhaps, just perhaps, that lesson would matter when it counted most.